Hi, it's Dr. Betty Robin with the Dentistry Rising podcast. You might know me as a dental practice sale broker from Orange County, California. I am a dentist as well as an attorney and broker, and it's my goal at this point to help you get where you want to go with your practices, to help inspire you, lead you in the right direction, and motivate you. So happy listening. Okay, this afternoon I'm here with Keanu Shah, Dr. Keanu Shah, who is kind of everywhere. I see you everywhere. You're a dentist, you're an implantologist, entrepreneur, educator, motivational speaker. You wear many, many hats. So thank you for taking time to join me today.
Thank you, Betty, for having me on the show. Yes, as a dentist, in order to be successful, we have to wear many hats.
That's true. We all go into dentistry because we like patients or like the art of dentistry, but it's really so much more than that.
Yes, and we tend to learn that more in the real life versus in dental school, as you know.
That's for sure. Well, tell me a little bit about how you got where you are now, how you decided to be a dentist. Tell me a little bit about your story, which I don't know at all.
So my journey began in Iran, but I grew up in Germany, and I did my high school there, and came here for undergraduate, and somewhere along the line from wanting to be a cardiac surgeon, I ended up being a dentist. I think that happened in undergrad. My best friend went to dental school, and I followed him the following year.
And that probably ended up being a very good decision for where we are now.
Yes, I think I was very fortunate to come into this noble profession.
I just did a podcast with a Persian CPA that's not out yet, but he also went to Germany. Now, why is that, from Iran to Germany?
So the biggest migration that happened and wealth transfer after 1979, during the revolution, led a major portion of the population to migrate to Europe, and some they happened in they ended up in Beverly Hills area, and then another group was in Germany. So my family was heading towards Europe and Germany versus the other crowd that came here. So a lot of them ended up in Europe and then ended up here. So it's an interesting bit of story.
Yes. So where did you go to dental school?
Southern Illinois University School of Dental Medicine. After undergrad at Western Illinois, I did dental school down there, and then I bought my first practice after 6 years of after 6 months of clinical practice out of school, and was very successful. We took it from a $400,000 office and quadrupled the numbers in our first year. And that enabled us to buy a second practice in Mount Vernon, and about 30 miles away. And next thing you know, after 3 years at 6 offices, and it was a great learning curve about how the industry works, how the business works, how the market works at the time.
Yeah, you do learn as you go along. So what happened to those? You say we. Who was it more than you as an owner?
Well, yeah. Some of them were in conventional settings, and some of them were in like retail type settings. I was building them in large box stores, like Meyer and Sears and some others. So there were other parties involved, but eventually we sold out what we had in those companies. And my wife Mallory and I moved out here to California to see a little bit more of the sun and the nice community you guys had here.
What year did you move here to California?
It was in 2010, late 2010.
Okay. And at some point, I believe you started focusing on implants.
Yes, so you have a couple of options when you come to California. See, when I was in Illinois, in the Midwest, there was not that abundant labor supply of doctors. So it was the tables would turn around. We had to find headhunters to help us find associates, because now nobody wanted to move out in some of those areas.
Interesting. Very different than here.
Yeah, when I got here to California, suddenly the tables had turned. There was so many doctors, and the employers had more of an opportunity to select. So you had either set up your own practice or you would up your skills and credentials. So I decided to start with the credentials. A lot of fellowships, mastership, diplomat, and did an MBA to get a bit better at the business side of things. And so location is very important, where you end up and what direction your career may go.
So do you have a practice at this point, or do you travel around and put implants in? How do you work at this point?
So I set up a practice about 2 years ago in Palm Desert, California, and I focus mainly on implant related procedures of full mouth rehabilitation. Actually, just about everything under the sun we do in-house. And from the past 7 years prior to that, when I was traveling, probably more than 300 offices where I was doing all of the root canals and the implants and the wisdom teeth extractions, I got to interact quite a bit with my colleagues and sort of learn their day-to-day issues and also the macroeconomics and the other things that might be of dentist interest. So it was very exciting. But now I'm sort of leaned back a little bit more to just 3 days worth of practice back at the office. Kept some clients that I still do. I've been doing surgery for in excess of 7 years. Dr. Conti, for example, that you know.
Oh, yes.
I'm still with her since I came to California. Actually, I've been with her since 9 years, since I got here. And we still do surgery. I enjoy going down there. But mostly now, I get to live the kind of life that I want, where I get to be an entrepreneur and help other people and create new things and innovations while practicing 2-3 days a week to keep my hand skills up. I actually happened to be here today. This morning we did surgery at Paradise Dental in San Capistrano. A little bit of one-on-one training with another doctor. So that was very much fun.
So what, you say your hands are in some other things. What else are you into?
Well, working on a couple of the patents that we have come out with related to implant procedures, but also I set up the International Extraction Academy about 5 years ago with Dr. Wiedemann, who now leads the implant department for graduates at New York University, and we've been holding workshops all across the country over the last 5 years. And it started with Dr. Wiedemann. Now we have over 50 experts on our panel at the International Extraction Academy. So there are workshops going on there. I'm frequently lecturing for different organizations, associations, not just domestically but internationally. So I travel a lot. Tomorrow I'm going to Las Vegas to lecture at the PRP Symposium with Dr. Garg and some of the leaders of industry there. And I just got back from Korea and Greece and some other places. And so the kind of thing that I always wanted to do is I wanted to A, have the ability to practice, and B, have the ability to interact a lot with my colleagues. So that's all an ongoing story.
So what is the International Extraction Academy? Are you teaching general dentists how to extract wisdom teeth?
Post-extraction treatment. So we have endodontists and orthodontists and periodontists and oral surgeons on our team. We don't promote extractions, but our vision and thoughts about the extraction process, exodontia, has substantially changed in the last couple of decades. We didn't have the high-speed handpiece till early 70s, and things have evolved from there. So we're teaching coronectomies, and we're teaching partial extractions, full extractions, wisdom teeth, immediate implants, guided bone regeneration, pharmacology, anesthesia, you name it. We try to bring all of the experts from the different fields around this procedure, which subsequently leads to prosthodontics and restorative and implants.
So you go forward into a full mouth case if needed.
Yes, but the colleagues, the younger generation especially, that likes extractions, they end up being the kind of crowd that loves doing surgery. They end up being great implantologists and then bring. So we create the bridge between your everyday MODs and dentures to becoming a expertise surgeon and actually taking that one step in your career.
Well, and I think it makes your career more exciting and more challenging. And, you know, if you get out of the MOD world.
That's right. And this is how society works. The more skills you acquire, the more valuable you are to society, which means the more employers are willing to hire you. And we'll get back to that topic in a second. But you're more valuable to society. Now, about employers and those kind of scenarios, you know, I never actually really got involved with practicing for a group practice type outfit. But my recommendation always to my colleagues is that if you get into that environment, make sure you're an owner. You know, it's possibly okay to do a little bit of associateship after dental school to get your feet wet. But at some point, you have to build your own destiny and your own life. You have to draw that picture that you put on the wall every day and look at and say, hey, this is what I want to do. And you got to get up every day and work towards that picture. And that's not going to happen when you work for somebody else, because no matter what you're paid, no matter what benefits they give you, the little small part that's taken out of the equation is the equity, okay, that you earn. You and I both know, I've been coming, you know, I used to live in Irvine 5 years ago, and I used to come to your open houses. And you know that when there was a good practice and the doctor wanted to get out of that practice, they'd be fighting over it.
Yeah.
Everybody wanted it, right? Some people would come in and give huge, higher offers than what the thing is worth.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And that was funny to me, because in Illinois, that kind of thing wouldn't
happen.
It wouldn't happen. So if our colleagues all knew and understood the business of dentistry and how it works, how you can get a practice, build it up a little bit, sell it for 4 or 5x, and work smarter than work harder, they wouldn't be looking into that direction, would they?
I agree.
No.
So are you an advocate of, it sounds like you are, of the smaller practice, and then, like, you're not saying owner in terms of ownership in a group. You're talking owner in a single practice that someone is doubling, tripling, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, as a logical thinker, I would say that if a management group comes around and wants to help me improve my practice and make it better, by all means, my doors are open. But the equity is mine, because, you know, that's what these patients owe us for, is 20 years of education. So for somebody to come around and say, hey, I'm going to now come and sit in your living room without paying any rent is not a very kosher situation. So everything is about negotiation. Let me give you an example. That palm practice, the palm desert practice that's on a Rodeo Drive-like scenario on El Paseo. I took $100,000 and negotiated a leasehold at the time with the landlord, where they allocated TI to them to over a certain period of time, and
which is tenant improvements.
And I went to bigger companies and said, hey, I'll take a $100,000 CT machine from you, but I'm not going to pay you for a year until my business picks up, but you'll have a guarantee that I will pay you. And with $100,000, we negotiated our way into the suppliers with all of the vendors, to a point where now in year 2 we are hitting close to $1 million of 3 days a week doing implants, and nobody's distressed. I didn't take a $500,000 loan. You already come out with $400,000 or $500,000 worth of loans out of school. But the solution is not to go work for somebody for 20%, 30% of collection, because you're just digging yourself deeper in and losing the valuable time that you have to create something of your own.
So explain to me a little bit more what you did. I didn't totally get it. So
you know, instead of going and taking a $500,000 loan from the bank, I said, okay, here, I'm going to do some cash allocation. And you got to talk to your accountant and see what's good for you, an S Corp, a C Corp, depending on your tax situation and what you're doing. But I said, I'm going to do the minimal. Yeah, you know, the first 6 months we used some cheap Chinese chairs. I mean, they weren't the greatest. They weren't the most beautiful.
So you just rented the space.
Yes, on El Paseo, a beautiful space.
Yeah, it's a fabulous street.
Spot.
Yeah.
So let's get also back to the location, but taking, essentially the idea is to take a minimal amount of investment, and you don't need 10 chairs. You need a couple of your front chairs, the 2 front closest to the door, functional.
Or one. I started with one chair.
One, yes. And then somebody comes in and does the procedures with you and you're off and running and you'll never look back again. Do you need a manager? No, you need a team. A team is key. If you have an office manager that is good and loyal to your organization, to your mission, and to your vision, and feels that as they belong, you don't need a massive management operation. You need a good office manager. And you need a good team, number 2. And then you need to have the drive to get the job done. You know, some of these people, some of these companies that have billions of dollars can't get 50 doctors in a room. But you can, because you're going to treat every patient so well that patient is an asset for you out on the outside world. Word of mouth is the most powerful referral system there is. So you start small, and the next thing you know, you're in a position to take that $100,000. And in California, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's at least 90% loan to value. So 90% of what this thing is valuable at, you take $100,000. Next thing you're sitting on $500,000 in profit for doing some hard work for 5 years, building a practice up, or you don't sell it and you enjoy it for 20 years, you know. But then you get benefits other kinds of ways. You get deductions. You go to conferences. You get to do this and you get to do that, and you don't have to ask for anybody's permission. Autonomy. Okay?
Anybody's permission. It's true, though.
Autonomy. You know, sometimes I say, hey, in 2 weeks I have a lecture in XYZ country, and I'm going to switch some things around in the office because I can, you know. So it's good to have autonomy and to be able to determine your own destination.
Control your own future, control how much money you make, control everything.
Yes, and we do well. The good thing about our profession is not only do we get to help a lot of people, but we have the ability to make up for our mistakes very quickly. So if we are not doing financially well, we can quickly get back into the office, work more, establish more, earn more. So one of my other recommendations is don't always try to build an empire. I had 6 of them, and 80% of my headaches were not from systems building alone, but from HR related issue. It had nothing to do with dentistry. It's one person wanting a raise here, and another person wanting to go on vacation, and those are the kind of things that drove me crazy. My dad used to always say, if you focus just on one and just build it and build it and build it, you don't need an empire. So this other trend that's been going around in the dental world is not necessarily the best for you or for your patients either. You can do just fine out of one and build everything you want. Do you think that dentistry is the only thing? Somebody's got to run this industry. There are people innovating. They're building companies. There are people behind doing science, research, innovation. So if you want to practice a little bit less and get more into those kind of things, you'll have the freedom that you want. But once you get 2-3 of these things.
So you're saying trend, you're meaning having 5-6 practices, selling them to whoever wants to buy them. Is that what you're referring to?
It's not for everyone. You have to have a particular skill and particular drive and a particular business acumen.
Exactly. An unusually good business acumen and love of Excel spreadsheets, basically.
Yes. And some people have that. Some people love that business, and if that's for them, then all power to you. If you're a doctor and you're a dentist and you're doing this with your colleagues, I'm all for it.
I think the statistics now are that people coming out of school, it's almost 50% going right into corporate, and not buying practices for at least 5 years, if ever. No,
yes.
I don't. First of all, the corporate solicits them very, very heavily. But also, I think it has something to do with the number of female dentists in dentistry. I mean, it is a factor.
Yeah, female colleagues of ours are tremendously expanding. I'm currently in the process of working with my team to select the top 100 doctors from around the world. And we have a lot of our female colleagues now coming in. When I look at the collage, it's something completely different than what it might have been in dental school.
Even for me, when I was in school.
But corporate, there's a place for them in this industry. And that place, you have to know which corporate. There are good players and there are bad players. If somebody's coming in and saying, hey, we're wanting to do this with you, you're gonna be a partner, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. And in a lot of states, that's not even permissible. But if that's the scenario, then yeah. But it's very prudent that the doctor is part owner or has something in this operation, because the way we process and make decisions for the best interest of the patient is not the same as somebody that's running numbers, and that goes far into the core of the practice, down to material selection, So it's a good thing to have the final say in the operation, so you're comfortable with what you're doing. Because when something goes wrong, it's going to be you.
Oh yeah, it is. The corporate doesn't have any responsibility.
Yeah, and it's sad that our colleagues are coming out with so much debt. The generation before me had almost barely $40,000, and then it went to 100, then 200, then 500.
Yeah, I was more in the 30,000. Yeah, it was nothing back then.
But when it pours, it rains. If you want to continue running and working for somebody else, and afraid to take a risk and step out of the norm, 50% is way too much for our profession to be going that way.
So what do you say about the argument they'll make that patients are more comfortable in corporate? Like, they'll liken it to a restaurant. If you go into a strange city, you'd rather go to Black Angus Steakhouse or, a known entity rather than a mom and pop restaurant. And the people say, oh, it's the same in dentistry. We know what we're going to get if we go to XYZ corporate.
That's actually a complete myth. They don't know what they get. They don't even know who's really practicing there that day sometimes. In corporate, there are some good ones and bad ones. Let me just kind of lay that flat out there. But it's a revolving door. Real people, Americans, they like the Midwest type hospitality, where you go to a doctor and your doctor, you know what you're gonna get because your mom went there, or your sister went there, or your brother's been there, or your cousin's been there. They don't want to go to a place where there's a different face every time. So it's very important that but that won't happen in a scenario where you have ownership, unless you're not practicing anymore or what have you. But when you go to Dr. Jones, you know what you're gonna get. When you go to X, Y, and Z, it's not all the same. Every doctor in there is different. They're operating on a different brand. So I highly disagree with the idea that somehow they get a better treatment because there's a corporate brand. Some of my colleagues are giving superior care to their patients, and they're sole proprietors because they're not working based on a standardized, customized system for a brand under a city, So it's
and they're developing real relationships with patients, and they're not told when to say what, when to touch a patient, all that has to come naturally. When it's scripted, it's just never going to feel, to me, right to a patient.
It's and it doesn't. And patients have also different priorities. They don't think about the same things that we think of about the quality of dentistry and how we're going to cut this crown prep, and they want to go to a place that's clean, somebody smiling at them at the front desk, pleasant, and not to be hurt when they go back there. Those are their priorities. If you can meet them, I would assure you that any sole proprietor could outcompete a corporation by applying themselves, because they are standardized, because when they want to make a change, it costs them hundreds of millions of dollars. If they want to start offering implants or start offering another service or changing to digital or what have you, when the bigger they are, it costs them a lot more money. But you're small, and you can actually do things that they cannot, which means get involved. They can, but they don't do that on a large scale. Get involved with the community, go to chamber meetings, have different sponsor, the Christmas event in town. And whatever you do, you are in a better position to move than larger outfits and corporations. But there is a place for them. I think they would do very well with state-offered programs, things of that sort, and
they are in general doing well until the spigot turns off again.
Well, they're claiming that they're increasing access. I don't know how they're increasing access.
I know.
But I can tell you that that I find them to be very good, probably for areas where we have low access and state-funded programs to help actually increase what they claim they're here to do. And that would be a good scenario for a year or two for colleagues to jump into and then gain the experience that they need. But when the dollar starts becoming the number one priority, that's when everything goes downhill versus patient care.
Well, let's change topics a little bit and tell me about implants, because you do an awful lot of implants from what I know. So, like, what do you do one day? Do you place them and let it heal? Tell me a little bit about how you got into it, how you think other people could get into it, and what your philosophy is.
It's a weekend course in Chicago in 2006. The salesperson came in from China, I think it was, come to a course. I went there and it just clicked. You know, sometimes in life, you know what your calling is. And all this travel and meeting thousands of doctors and executives all across the world, one thing I can tell you is that the future of dentistry and medicine is regeneration and minimally invasive procedures. Those are the two items that I've been wanting to focus on. Implants, for us, is a recession-proof market. If you look at, and I'll explain to you what that is in a second, there were 2 billion people worldwide are missing at least one tooth or dentulous. At least 1 out of 3 Americans running around has one missing tooth. It's a silent epidemic, and there's only 10% of us dentists placing implants. And I'm doing the math, and I'm seeing, hey, there's nowhere near enough oral surgeons and periodontists that can cater to this volume of patients. These people are not going to travel far for one implant or two to get it a little cheaper, and when they do, we end up often fixing it, and it costs them more. So patients are going to come to you. If you up your skills and learn to do that, it starts very easy. You start reviewing your anatomy, you go into a couple of courses, you start doing the easy onesie twosies. As your skill goes up, you get to do more complex immediate implants where you load it immediately. You do full mouth arch cases, but it all starts somewhere. You got to take the first step and get mixed into that crowd. It's a very small community.
So what course or where would you recommend someone that's never placed an implant start?
Well, it depends what society. There's so many different courses now, especially here in California area. But I went to the California Implant Institute. There you get a little bit of didactic to start off with. They'll go through all of the landmarks and all the little things that you need to know, and then you switch over to more clinical shoulder-to-shoulder courses. And then I would go to Mexico or somewhere nearby there's also a rule now in 4 states in the U.S. where you can get a temporary license, like in Arizona, to do surgeries.
Really?
So they're putting some courses around that. There's 4 states. California is not one of them. But in Arizona, some companies are wanting to go there. Some still go to Mexico. The problem with Mexico is the travel and differences in culture and language barrier and this and that. So we kind of want to do more of these here in the U.S. So I would expect more of these to come up. But you should eventually graduate into a program where you get to do some, 20, 30 cases yourself over a course of a year. You don't have to take off a year out of clinical practice. They have weekend courses where you go 4 or 5 times a year for 3-4 days, and you get a ton of knowledge. So depending on which institute you choose, and there's so many of them. There's the Mish Institute, and then there's the California people, and then USC, and everybody has their own programs.
And Loma Linda, my school has been strong in implants for ages.
That's right.
I don't know. I assume they have weekend courses too. I know they have the couple-year program.
Loma Linda has those too, and that's where you get started. If you need to get into a university, there's a lot of programs for a year as well. To get in and get out, but it's going to be in the forefront of dentistry because people are now very aware They understand that bridges have a shorter lifespan. They understand that the standard of care now is implants, and 10% creates a very, very nice market for any of the doctors to jump in, and that number is going to tremendously grow.
So would you recommend new dentists do find out more about implants and take a course if they're so inclined, and or other specialties? Like you said, you do endo, oral surgery. You do most of the specialties.
Yes, I practice in all of the specialties. Implants, in reality, if done minimally invasive, are as easy as doing an MOD. Sometimes I find MODs to be tougher to do, and they're very, very valuable. Some people just don't have the patience for endo. They go in and the file breaks and they're done for forever. And some people just can't see blood. They like their fillings and their crown and bridges. That crowd should really learn how to do veneers and those type of minimally invasive procedures that have a lot of appeal to patients. So my recommendation is, if you have ever had any interest in extractions or wisdom teeth or anything like that, this is your calling. Explore implantology. You'll do very, very, very well.
So don't just stay the plain vanilla general dentist. See what else is out there and what you enjoy doing and what you can add to your practice.
That's right. And when you're a sole proprietor, you get to choose the kind of continuing education you want. You get to, shut the office down for a weekend and take your staff, have a good time, mingle with colleagues, pick up a lot of information, start taking down names and numbers and emails, and that's how it all starts.
Since you know so many dentists, what do you think the ones that are truly successful, I'm primarily in a financial situation, compared to ones that are not very successful, what do they do differently? Because as a practice broker, I get calls to sell the doctor's practice who are doing like $200,000, $300,000 a year, which pretty much aren't sellable. They aren't, there's more debt than there is income. And I'll have somebody across the street or across the hall doing $2 million. What do you see the differences in practitioners being?
How you sell yourself, how you sell yourself to the public, how you sell yourself to patients that come to the door. If somebody comes to you and if, let's say you're in a bar and a guy comes to you and wants to start a conversation with you, if the guy says, hey, look at me, I'm different than everybody in this room, she's gonna think you're a slime ball, right?
Yes.
Okay. So don't say you're different, be different. These doctors are different. They give you a blanket halfway through the procedure. They put their hands on your shoulder and tell you everything is going to be okay. And then they're going to sit down with you another 20 minutes and talk to you about your problem, instead of numbing you up and running to the other room and then coming back and realizing the patient is no longer numb. These people realize those small little things that tick them, and you only get one chance to make a first impression, right? So if you lose that chance, it'll be hard for that patient to send over their 10 friends and colleagues. They'd rather send them across the hallway from you where the guy is making $2 million. You're going to be sitting in the office wondering why. Sometimes we have to learn the things that they taught us in dental school. The real world doesn't work the same way. Not everything is ideal. People have different problems. Somebody might be upset after a filling, not because you did a bad job, maybe because they had something else going on in their life. So, we all like the feedback of, hey, good job, doc, whatever. So you have to really, really understand also cultures, the way you deal with people. An Amish patient that comes in acts completely different than an Italian patient that comes in with half the family screaming and yelling in the waiting room, right? So cultural learnings are important. So it comes down on how you sell yourself. Are you anywhere out in the public space? Does anybody know who you are, what you do? Have you done anything good for your community, or has it all been about you? So all of those things will add. What do your reviews look like? What are people saying about you? So it all kind of sums up into a funnel that feeds the patients into your practice. If you don't create that funnel, you're going to be the other guy on the other side of the hallway, slowly dying.
Well, you're really good at creating that funnel because I see you everywhere. How did you learn so much about social media, and do you do it all yourself, or?
You're in a different era now. It's not anymore where you make a mistake and you can kind of put it under the rug. It's now in the public domain. It's no longer as important if you get sued or if you end up in the court system. It's more important of what people are really saying about you and how you're viewed on the outside world. We have the court of public opinion, let's put it that way. So in that same scenario, we've also enabled each other technologically to speak to one another and get our message across. As doctors, which is a Latin word which comes from docere, it means doctor, someone who teaches. So for us, the ideal is to do one, learn one, teach one. That's what we have always been trained to do, and using the scientific method naturally. With social media, we can get our word and our mission and whatever it is that we're working on. There's a lot of people out there that are working towards educating, training others, creating opportunities without self-interest. Some of these guys are doing podcasts. Some of these guys are doing social media chat rooms and groups and so forth. So the only way to avoid any criticism is complete silence. So either you can get up and stand for something, or you can stand for nothing. So I urge my colleagues, what maybe the President of the United States could have done 30 years ago, we can all now do by getting our word out and learning how to do it, and using social media to our advantage, to the advantage of our friends, colleagues, patients. It's a curve. But the problem with a lot of doctors is we all tend to know it all, and we don't want to learn something new.
That's true.
And it becomes a challenge also with the baby boomers sometimes. I'm very surprised. So there's a learning curve there. We can learn from them, and they can learn from the younger generation and how to deploy these kind of tools in our practice, and also using the same tools to learn from others that can easily transmit information. Information exchange is powerful, and
it's easy to do nowadays.
Yes.
So where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years, and where do you see dentistry?
I think dentistry is going to continue to grow as long as we can keep our independence, and not be graded down to what happened to pharmacy and optometry and some of the other professions. I think
which is a risk.
Yes, it's a great risk threatening our profession. What used to be once a warm, kind neighborhood dentist is going to get downgraded to a Walmart type
technician,
yeah. Which is not what. But if they had ownership in those Walmarts and Kmart's and Myers and whatever else that's out there, the large box and retail settings and all these corporates, the equation wouldn't change. We'd still be in charge. So something that we have to watch for in the generations to come. But I think anyone that's in dentistry, although those big student loans prevent some of us from seeking our ultimate goals with marriage and be it for whomever is into that, and buying a house and getting a car and setting up a practice. The solution is you have to take one more hit after dental school, one more challenge you have to overcome before it gets good again. But if you keep working for $500 a day, and they work you like crazy hard, you're nowhere near there yet. So you gotta reconsider your position. Another advice that I can give you is always start working backwards in life, in your clinical practice, in your clinical procedure.
What's that mean?
Prosthodontists, dentists, when they make a crown for an implant, you want to first envision what that crown looks like. so we can have the proper orientation of the implant placement and have guides and whatever is involved in the procedure. But you have to first start with what the final product is supposed to look like. Then you work backwards from that. That's where I want my implant, that's where I want my abutment, that's where I want my crown. Now, if you want to have a practice, so if you go out and you are interested in implants and surgery, you end up going to an area where people can't afford it, you're going to be sitting there, you're going to have to either discount your product or your service dramatically to gain some steam in your office, or you have to essentially, if you're not discounting it, you're going to have a really tough time. You're going to be back to the MODs. So work backwards. You got to go to an area. Location is key, where you get people, where you don't have to solely rely on your marketing. You rely on the word of mouth and the foot traffic or what have you. So you work backwards from that. You start there, and then you create the life that you want. So a little piece of advice.
Good advice.
Yeah.
What is that? Who said start with the end in mind? Covey?
Yeah, that's the saying,
I think
right?
that was Stephen Covey, yeah.
Yeah, I love the concept. I think it applies to a lot of things.
Yeah, it applies to things small as your treatment plan or big as your life.
That's right.
I think it does.
That's right. So I'm open to help anyone that wants to reach out to me. I'm very easily found on websites and social media to give them any guidance. I've done it for hundreds upon hundreds of our colleagues.
That's very generous of you.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for taking time today. Is there anything else you would like to add?
No, I look forward to maybe follow up in a few years, and if there's anything else I can do to facilitate and be part of this wonderful, growing, rising, the dentistry rising, I'd like to participate in it.
Well, thank you. I'll forward the questions I get or the comments from doctors, and you can respond to them, and we can put them out there, your answers, if you'd like.
Certainly. Also, thank you for what you do for our profession. Also, you went out and got a law degree. For a lot of us, it doesn't stop at the dental stage, and there's always room for more learning. So.
And this podcast has been my biggest learning experience, but it's really fun, and I'm really enjoying it. Oh.
Yeah, likewise.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Dentistry Rising podcast, Dr. Bette Robin. Please subscribe on iTunes so we can get better and better at helping you make your practice dreams come true.